Can I skip this? I mean, nobody would have cared. Nobody's forcing me to do this. If I just put this to the side and didn't talk about this for the marathon, no one would have a problem with it. Wouldn't you? I guess I'm just like torturing myself. And I'm just an absolute completist, I suppose. Let's get it over and done with. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the first episode in the Australian-produced spin-off series of K9 Regeneration. Written by Sydney Armstrong and S.P. Klaus, and is directed by David Caesar and Mark de France. I think that's how you pronounce his name anyway. Now, this exists, and you know, like, if you are even aware of the reputation this series has, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But how did such a series came into being? Well, you see, back in the 1970s, BBC had this kind of agreement to make it a much more friendly environment for writers, in which if you write the story, for example, The Invisible Enemy, the story which K9 was created, then you have a part copyright to any character that you've created. For example, Bob Baker and I believe David Martin as well created the character of K9, so they own partial copyright to that character. And for years they've been wanting to capitalise on the character, most noticeably in K9 and Company, a spin-off series starring John Leeson as K9 and Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. But for years there was a lot of problems with it, and BBC were just not interested, feeling that K9 was mainly more interesting as a side character. For example, being the side character to Sarah Jane Smith. However, what's interesting about K9 as a character is that there's not just one K9. There are actually multiple K9s within the Doctor Who canon. The first K9, which we'll be talking about to some degree, left with the character of Leela to stay on Gallifrey, and also appeared in the Gallifrey audio dramas. Now, Bob Baker has entitlement to this character and can do whatever he wants with this character, providing, of course, if he takes it out of BBC, that it has no real reference to Doctor Who. Therefore, the canonicity of the story of the series is questionable, and a lot of people, for good reason, don't consider this canon, and that is completely up to you. But Bob Baker does state it is canon from his point of view, and states that the storyline continues on from the Mark 1 K9, although I will address that nothing in the series is actually mentioning which particular version of K9 we're talking about. This could be a completely new K9 as far as the audience is concerned. So there you go. So now the Australian, Bob Baker basically took his copyright to Australia, where Park Entertainment, along with another company, Stewart and Wall Entertainment, combined it to make a studio specifically to make K9 content, which comes into light with Metal Mutt Entertainment, which basically the idea is that it's a company devotedly created to K9 content. And you think that would be a recipe for great ideas and a studio just solely devout to one franchise. What could possibly go wrong? It went wrong. It went very wrong. It went unbelievably, splendidly wrong. But why did it go? What is so bad about this? Or is it really as bad as people make it out to be? I mean, when we start the story, it actually looks pretty promising with some really great lighting and a visual style, or at least when it comes to the night time, with this really moody atmosphere, night environment, with this sort of sci-fi mixed with a sort of just under the past of modern time London. This story is set within 2050, and right off the bat, when we see the story start off, it looks absolutely stunning. There's no problems to do it. The first issue comes when the characters start talking. I don't know what it is, whether it's some sort of audio issue or whether there is something just inherently bad with the acting or just the purely dumbfounding dialogue. But everything sounds like ADR. Every character sounds like they have been dubbed over. And it is so off-putting. It reminds me a lot, the performances remind me a lot of The Room. Yeah, maybe not Tommy was so bad, but like maybe if Greg Sestero in The Room, it kind of has that really offbeat, awkward atmosphere to it, and you do kind of get the feeling that the only real direction that every actor had gotten is, it's a kid's show. And it's some of the worst dialogue to come from the Doctor Who franchise, I must be honest. Not like something like inherently bad about it. It's not like characters are like saying like something which will go against the ideas of the franchise, but just in like the basic building blocks of talking structure and English, every character just sounds off, odd and strange. But speaking of characters, well, we have a great cast for you here. We have one second. We have Professor Griffiths, a scientist who he works for this evil corporation, which is, so it seems to be this running the country at the moment, and he is building some sort of time and space technology to presumably find his wife and children, whether they died previously or whether they're stuck somewhere. We don't know yet. That's something to be built up for the rest of the series. That is kind of interesting, and I like the kind of mystery that we are graduated with this character in this story, how we're building up this strange, mysterious character, this professor who's obsessed with it, and he has to basically work with something. And for the first scene, that works very well, and when we get the first action scene, and then we later learn for some reason he can't leave the house. But then after that, he's basically a one-note silly character who gets into like silly situations and has really nothing interesting to say or do other than the fact that every piece of dialogue that comes from him is very strange and very odd. We also have we also have Stark Reality. Yes, well, at least that's the character's, the name that the character gave himself. This sort of rebellious 14-year-old orphan who is trying to overthrow. He's basically this rebel who's he hates like authority figures as far as we can guess, because we really don't get any great introductions to any characters. The first time we meet this character, he is doing some technobabble to try and change this this advertisement, which I love how there's a lot of shots in which there's just London, which is giant TVs just floating around everywhere. But anyway, this dark reality character, he is this hacker, and he's trying to change the sign so it's you're free, you have no freedoms, free yourselves kind of thing. And he interacts with this other character, another important character to the franchise, and despite it seemingly it's strange because it's the dialogue is as if we already know these characters. The dialogue starts off with the characters, it's oh, what are you doing here? Leave me alone. And that's our introduction to these characters. And it's just so bizarre. We never get a true feeling of these characters. Who is he? What are we? What are we doing here? Why is he rebelling? Apart from the fact that we see some RoboCops. No, seriously, there are cops that seems to be robots, which we'll talk about later on. The character really doesn't have really much interesting to do or say. And the dialogue and the acting, I'm sorry to say, but the acting, just god awful. And though there is this kind of rebellious nature with the character, it's so inconsistent, it just doesn't add up all the way, because apart from really that first intro, he's very not that rebellious. He gets taken to prison at one point, in this virtual prison, and despite having his character talk to him and is okay, we can break you out, we're going to make this plan, he doesn't seem interested at all. We see in his character at a low point where we've only just been introduced to this character, and it is off-putting as hell. We also have Geordie, I believe that's how the name is pronounced. This ballerina who seems to be inspired by Stark Reality to also be a hacker and this amazing rebellious character, and she is the one that he was meeting up to begin with. And again, nothing interesting here. These characters, they're basically they're having this rebellion, and you see the police characters chase after them, and they stumble upon the home of Professor Griffiths, and they see him trying to make this portal so he can find his family. And so they just kind of witness this, and then Stark Reality, come on, that's just a hilarious name, trips over a wire, puts it back in, and this character's no, what are you doing? You have no idea what you've done. And then we get introduced to the villains. The portal reopens, but because it's not calibrated properly, it opens a portal to a new area in the space-time continuum, where we get our villains, the Jinxed. Yes, that's their name. These giant turtle-like alien entities, which I don't think they're conscious they're like animals, and what they do is they spray their victims with this odor, and whoever then has this odor, they become reluctantly wanting to kill them until they basically die, which later on we learn is 9,000 years. And we're going to talk about something which I don't think it's actually appreciated enough when it comes to this franchise, and that is, at least for this episode, its use of practical effects. Actually, it's kind of hit and miss, because I do like how we have a lot of costumes with the robot cops. I will admit, look absolutely terrible, and they look really corny. The word Power Rangers comes to mind, but not in a good way. Also, the RoboCops have Cockney accents for some reason. What? What? But the Jigs are these giant turtle-like entities, and when you see them still looking around, they do actually look kind of cool. And when they're by themselves, they have this data moshing effect around them. So they kind of have this really weird alternate dimension looking movement to them. And that kind of looks cool when they're slowed down and they're by themselves and we get some really nice shots with them. However, for the majority of their appearances, for one, the costume doesn't look that particularly great. Like, they are very limited in their movements. And they have tiny arms with the long legs. They look genuinely like costume without the data motion effect. But also as well, the effect looks really off-putting when we're by characters that are not data mosh. And it does kind of seem like a cool idea. The imagery of a monster that has been data moshed on one side of the screen with human characters that are not being data moshed on the other side of the screen. Sounds like a cool idea. However, it gives this story a really ugly look. This story just makes you feel sick just looking at it. And I haven't even talked about K9 yet. K9 comes through the portal that the Jinx appear from. And when we first get introduced to him, he appears in his classic appearance, in his classic Mark 1 design, where he's fighting off the Jinx, and it's here where our characters run through the door and we learn that Professor Griffiths can't leave the building because he has a disease or something. What he says, the dialogue goes so quick that I've completely forgotten what was up with his character. And K9 activates his self-destruct system, which destroys him and all the Jinxes around him. Despite there clearly being 6 or 7 coming through the portal, and he seems to destroy 4. 1 seemingly survives and gets out. And so they look around at the scattered remains of K9, and they see this as this little device, and it's like that's the only thing that survived that's left of him. And we also have this character that's walking, another recurring main character of the series, and his name is Darius, who seemingly is the assistant of Professor Griffiths. And I was looking at him, and I was like, this guy looks really familiar. He seems to be easily the worst acted character in this episode so far, and easily the worst handled. As first as he comes in, he automatically has this something against Stark Reality. Stark Reality, what a stupid name. And no reason, absolutely, he literally just comes into the room and has a go at Stark Reality and seems to hit it off with Georgie for some reason. He seems to be this assistant character for Professor Griffiths, and that's really all we get to him, despite him apparently supposing to be one of the main cast members of the series. And I was looking at him, and he looked really familiar, so I looked it up. It's David Webster. Yeah, David Webster. He's a pretty big actor. Well, I say big. He's a pretty decent actor in these days. I mostly known him from episodes of Punisher, but you might also remember him from that. What's that one with I think it's the Go Back in Time to the day Kennedy was assassinated with J.J. Abrams. Yeah, him. He got his role, his breakout role, from a terrible K9 spin-off. You cannot make this shit up. Come on, people. And he's the worst acted character and the worst character in the story so far. I'm sorry, I just really just... and something happens. We don't know what. This doesn't seem to be nothing triggered it. But the device that survived from K9 seems to take the broken parts of K9 and rebuild itself in a new design. This comes into result of the newly designed K9, which was only made so they can separate its copyright from the BBC, who were using the original design for the Sarah Jane Adventures, who would become a prominent character later down in series 3, if I remember correctly. He will return again as a prominent character to that franchise in series 3 of Sarah Jane. So we have this design, which a lot has been said, that it looks, I mean, look at it. That is just, it's an ugly piece of machinery. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's actually pretty decent personally, but with K9, it doesn't have that iconic, it has that kid, well, K9's always been kid friendly, but almost CBBS children appearance. I hate just looking at it with its weird legs, which this K9 floats around as well, and it's got the bone on its chest and its weird face with its weird ears. I don't know. I just personally, I don't know. Part of me likes it because it does have this modern look to it, but on the other hand, it is also incredibly ugly in some regards as well. And I think what makes it really, I mean, John Leeson returns as K9, and he's fantastic as always. But I think what makes this story a cardinal sin, and why this story is this is a terrible opening for a series. Not only do we not get a great introduction to our main characters, but K9, the main protagonist, the one that the show is named after, the one that everybody came here to see, gets nothing to do at all. I can't name you a single thing he does. He mistakes Stark reality as a jinx, as it's got this poison, the stench on him, I should say. Mistakes him as one, and then learns then that it's not actually one because it says down boy, which it said earlier on in the episode. But the majority of K9's plot is that he's lost his memory, and he's teaming up with Professor Griffiths to not only restore his memory, but hopefully get him back to where he came from. And that's it. That's all he does. Just a few bits of dialogue, and that's all he gets. And the main plot line revolves around the RoboCops. I'm going to call them RoboCops. The Cockney RoboCops. They come in. They take Stark reality into this virtual prison. Essentially, what they do is they put him in his prison, and they put this visor over his face, and so he sees this digital world where it's basically like that scene in The Matrix where everything is white. Why do they do this? I mean, they've got them in prison anyway. Why do they put them in the virtual world? It's just really backwards and makes no lick of sense. But anyway, despite Stark reality supposed to be like the hacker of the crew, the Geordie character seemingly hacks into his feed and is able to talk to him and is like, we're going to set you free. No, you don't understand, and all that. And that comes into the story, and it's not really that interesting, and it doesn't really build up to much, as despite them talking about it, despite this seemingly this character, these two characters growing to understand and appreciate each other, like, what's going to happen? Is it going to be like Stark is like, I don't trust you, and then the girl's going to rescue him and stuff? Nope, that does not happen. Does she encourage Stark to break loose and be free and become the rebel he always was, even though that's a terrible plotline because this is an introduction to this character? No, that doesn't happen. This character, they talk, and that's it. She goes offline so that she could do her ballet classes, whilst back in the prison, one of the Jinx has tracked down Stark Reality, making a security breach in the prison. And for some reason that makes the security breach means that all the prisoners get released, or at least Stark Reality gets released, as the Jinx comes in to come in to try and like eat him or kill him or whatever they wants to do, and Stark Reality escapes through that because the creature came in to try and kill him, breaking into the building, allowing for Stark Reality to escape. Where then he heads back to the Professor Griffiths, asking for his help to keep him safe, to keep him away. And it's like, sure, yeah, no problem. As Geordie returns to the base, returns to him, it's like, oh yeah, we found you, hooray! Everybody is safe and sound. And K9, it's the scene what I'm on about, where K9 thinks that he's a Jinx, but then it's like actually a human because you said something previous in the episode. And the story ends kind of there in terms of plot. We get introduced to this new character, this woman who seemingly works for this evil organization. I can't remember what the organization is called. The company? Is it? It's just completely blanked out of my memory at this point. Where she comes in and she's like, we're looking for this Stark Reality boy. Have you seen him? No, maybe he's at the prison. Did you check there? Well, we're also looking for this robot dog looking thing that's been spotted around London earlier today, and the company wants the machine so that it can use it to build weapons, because they feel like this is a highly advanced weapon it could be. So if you have any information, let us know. And the professor's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And the woman is like, if you have any information and you don't tell us, we will stop funding for your space-time project, so you don't be able to save your family. Setting up the plot of the series. And then the story ends with our characters kind of having a laugh, enjoying each other's company. And that is Regeneration. What the hell was that? That wasn't good. That was bad. The performances, the directing, the monsters, the plot, the script, everything that could have gone wrong seems to have gone wrong. And I don't know what is the cause of this. Now, you might be thinking, and people who might have understand and kind of heard this story before might have gone, Ida, you're not giving this series a fair shot, because yes, nothing actually happens within this plot of episode. However, it's technically a 3-parter with the next 2 episodes. To that I say, the fact that this story still has nothing to offer still isn't a good sign, and B, this story aired in October of 2009, with the series continuing on with the 2nd episode onwards in January 2010. There was a gap between this episode and when the series started. Why they did that? No idea. But it means this story just really has this hollow feeling to it. You feel like you're not getting not even like a basic look at the picture. It feels really rushed. It feels very half-assed, and I'm just not interested in where this is going. However, I will be tackling the rest of the series because I guess I'm just absolutely mad. Or at least all the stories on Volume 1. I can't seem to track a cheap copy of Volume 2. It seems Volume 2 seems to be pretty rare, and I am not spending 50 quid on Volume 2. So unless somebody can find a cheap copy that I can have, then I might not be able to finish the series. Which after this episode, might actually be a good thing. So anyway, that's K9's Regeneration. So join me next time when the Doctor enters an academy of the greatest athletes. However, they're all now prisoners, working for a returning monster. So join me next time for the Sontaran Games. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!